Testing, what is going on? All right, I haven't made a live stream in a while, but I'm back. Chris is here, back with another astrology video. But it's going to be a forecast for the week of 12/11 through 12/17. We are currently in Sagittarius season. I'm going to be going through the chart, giving myself something to do today, and it allows me to see what else is going on for the people. All right, video link. 1 second. Let me send the link out to Facebook. On my story as well. All right. All right, let me get into the charts. So, how it's going to be done first is I'm going to be doing it for all 12 zodiac signs, whether you're in Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, or Pisces. We're going to be going in order, and I'm going to read y'all what planets are currently where they're going to be from yesterday all the way up into the 17th, and how each of those individual planets should be affecting your sign. But let me go over the planets and where they are currently. As of yesterday, you had the sun was at 19 degrees, you had Mars at 12 degrees, and you had the moon at 5 degrees, all of them in Sagittarius. Sun in Sagittarius, happy solar return to all Sagittariuses out there. Sun in Sagittarius points towards education. It points towards universities. It points towards blessings. Points towards forgiveness, benefits for everybody. It points towards laughter. It points towards everything having to do with luck. It also points towards your vehicle. Points to the color blue, royal blue, and purple. Points towards everything having to do with even being hypocritical from time to time. Too much, excess, things of that nature and intent. Having Mars be in Sagittarius as well. Mars in Sagittarius is going to point towards, first thing you need to know, Mars is fire. It is action. It is being aggressive. It is everything having to do with the self. Mars in Sagittarius points towards self-happiness. It also is going to point towards everything having to do with self gratitude. Is going to point towards potentially Sagittarius could also point towards the blessing father, the father or the parent, mostly the father, that's going to give you gifts or is going to really provide for you in a more helpful way. It also points to God the Father as well as that. Mars being in Sagittarius during this period of time is going to point towards people taking themselves to school, doing things for self. Having all of these points towards potentially a fight could break out depending on what sign you're at. It could point towards a fight happening during a school, during campus area. You could have a teacher get angry at you, a professor, university professor, writing fast, talking fast, being aggressive. It also points towards, Sagittarius also points towards large things, anything being large, and Mars points towards fighting. Maybe a large fight breaks out, things of that nature or intent, depending on what end of the spectrum that it can land on for you. The moon being in Sagittarius, the moon points to your emotions, points to ability to nurture, points towards your upbringing, and it has everything to do with your level of comfort. Moon in Sagittarius, as I'm looking at this chart right now, is pointing towards, could point towards a parent being happy, points towards the happiness of a parent, the blessing of a parent, even things of that nature and intent. When the moon was there, and the moon currently is still in Sagittarius today as well. Moon being in Sagittarius for that. Could point towards blessings. It could point towards massive care, being cared for, nurturing, things of that nature and intent. It could point towards an overflow of emotions, even. So people might get into situations where you're more expressive, or you might be hit with your emotions a lot more frequently than you would if the moon was in any other sign. Coming off that, you have Venus, which is your relationships, your business, how you eat, points towards everything to do with your morals, your values, anything having to do with weddings, parties, partners. And Venus is currently in Scorpio at 8 degrees. Scorpio points towards lust, it points towards revenge, it points towards hate, it points towards your power, your willpower. Everything having to do with the underworld, the mafioso. It points towards the act of sex, ejaculation. It points towards the act of murder, even, is Scorpio. It points towards all forms of intensity or life or death processes, from birth to death. Venus in Scorpio can point towards having lust over a partner, the loss of a partner. It can point towards having a level of jealousy towards a partner, or it can mean a loss of, or it can mean in terms of business, if you put it towards a business sense, it could mean um, obsessing over business, obsessing over money, jealousy over money, or how much money is being spent on a child, things of that nature and intent, or on anybody for that matter of fact. 12. Uranus is still in Taurus. Uranus is going to point towards your friends. It points towards the public. Your friends, it points towards the public. It points towards everything having to do with your knowledge. It points towards the heavens. It points towards everything having to do with astrology, everything having to do with humanity, the public, traffic. You can point towards calamity as well. Uranus is in Taurus, and Uranus is one of the slower moving planets, taking about 84 years to go around the zodiac. Uranus in Taurus means electronic money. It points towards a calamity, a collapse, catastrophe happening in the economy, Taurus. It can point towards unnatural things. It can point towards unique, unnatural, artificial. It points towards putting technology in nature. It points towards the transformation. It points towards the unnatural things happening in nature, or artificial forms of money online. Having everything having to do with cryptocurrencies that's been popping up over these past couple of years. All these digital currencies, all these online banks, how banks have you do all of your payments online now, or they're moving towards that bracket, and that's going to be there for a very long time, a couple more years. Jupiter is in Taurus. Jupiter says everything that Sagittarius does: luck, blessings, expanse, fortune, and Taurus points to money. So that points towards massive money. It points towards really being grateful for your value system, a massive amount of food potentially. It points towards anything having to do with your morality coming from your philosophy, morality, Taurus coming from your philosophy. Jupiter spending a lot of money on, or money being spent on schooling, on university, even things of that nature, depending on who you are in your sign. You have the North Node in Aries. Aries is going to point towards fire. It points towards everything that Mars points towards: fire, aggression, sharp objects, being fast, quick, everything having to do with the self, anger. And the North Node points towards your destiny. It points towards what in this lifetime you've come to do or experience. North Node is going to be in Aries for a pretty long time as well too, or not too long, but for about a year and a half, the North Node takes to move through one zodiac sign. So with the North Node being in Aries, this is a time for people to really reflect on themselves and things of that nature and intent when it comes towards it. Having Chiron in Aries as well, Chiron points to your wounds. It points to how you heal from those wounds. It points towards events that you can't really control. Chiron in Aries is going to point towards a lot of self-healing during this period of time for people while it's transiting through this sign. Having it as well going on, you have Neptune. in Pisces. Neptune is also going to be in Pisces for a long period of time. Neptune is deception. It is music. It points towards all forms of drugs and medicinal medicines. It points towards gasoline. It points towards your beliefs, your visions, your dreams. It points towards illusions, hiding. It points towards the privacy. It points towards the unseen, being behind, under, in a cave, in dark, damp areas that you can't see. It points towards your grandparents. And Neptune is at home in Pisces, so it's going to point towards us being in this era right now where we're really dealing with fog. We're dealing with spirituality, connecting with people on spiritual bases and things of that nature. And intent too points towards everything having to do with wool being put over our eyes. Things are not as clear as they may seem, or it points towards a period of time where people have a lot of faith in their religions or faith in their belief system. They believe in the music or the unnatural, the unseen, things of that nature and intent. And Neptune is going to be in Aries. For Neptune is going to be in Pisces for a couple years longer. Saturn is in Pisces. It just came out of retrograde. Now it is going direct again. Saturn is in Pisces. Saturn points to difficulties, um, hardships. It points towards taking your time. It points towards delays. It points towards everything having to do with destruction, construction. It points towards discipline. It points towards putting a stop to things. It points towards everything having to do with fame or the tearing down of something. Neptune or Saturn in Pisces is going to point towards difficulties, delays, hardships coming towards the music industry, coming towards the medical industry, coming towards the religious spaces where there's a lot more construction going to be going on or destruction. It can point on a personal level. It points towards seriously believing. It can point towards a serious level of belief or belief that leads to discipline, even things of that nature and intent too for a personal level. Having the MC, well, the MC will change depending on the day. Pluto is still in Capricorn. It will soon enter into Aquarius coming into next month. Well, Pluto's still in Capricorn. This is the last period of time. Pluto points to everything that Scorpio does. It points towards life and death processes. It points towards everything having to do with um, lust, hate, jealousy, your willpower, manipulation, pushing things forward towards your agenda. It points towards everything having to do with um, intensity. It points towards the underworld. It points towards the jungle, nature, animals out in the wild doing survival tactics and instincts. And having Pluto in Capricorn means that has been, especially for this past period of time, it points towards people in authority manipulating the situation. It points towards authority figures, Capricorn, manipulating the situation, Pisces. It also points towards the death or hardships when it comes to life, just hardships in life in general during these periods in time as Pluto has been in Capricorn. Life has been tough during this period of time. And it's going to point towards, since it's still there and it's going to be there for about another month or so, this will be the last time we will see Pluto in Capricorn for the rest of our lives. No one else will be living long enough to see a Pluto return, because Pluto is the slowest moving planet that we currently clock in the zodiac, especially using Western astrology. It's going to take about 256 years before Pluto returns back to its last position. So this is the last time we're going to see Pluto in Capricorn as it's going to move into Aquarius. And you currently have Mercury in Capricorn. Mercury in Capricorn. Mercury is going to point towards how you speak, how you talk, how you think. It points towards your habits. It points towards your level of cleanliness. It points towards everything having to do with your nervous system, your arms, your lungs, things of that nature and intent too. And Mercury in Capricorn is going to point towards having your mind made up, being serious about what you do, things of that nature and intent. Is going to point towards everything having to do with restraining your speech. It can mean being very cold in the way that you speak. You can point towards everything having to do with really speaking in a structured manner, writing something structured out, following a routine, a discipline, following a standard, a guideline when it comes towards how you speak, how do you do your work, how do you go about habits. It points towards really having discipline when it comes to building habits as well. Well, those are all the planets that we go through over these next 7 days. Let's see. On the 13th, the moon will enter Capricorn. On the 15th, the moon will enter Aquarius. And on the 17th, the moon will enter into Pisces. Every other sign, every other planet will stay in the same sign that they are in throughout this week. Now let's do Aries first. Aries. This is going to be if you're an Aries sun or you're an Aries rising. Let's see. Coming off December 11th. Aries, during this week in time, you have Chiron and you have the North Node currently in your first house. North Node is going to point toward your destiny. So Aries, you're going to find yourself during this period in time really working with doing things for yourself. You're going to find yourself moving in the direction that you want, that is going to be pushing you forward. Depending on where your North Node sits. If your North Node sits in a cardinal sign, you're having a square right now, and that could point towards difficulties with you being yourself, enacting for yourself. But if you have your North Node in a fire sign, for instance, that will be in a trine position, that will point towards a good aspect towards your North Node and you being able to play out your destiny in the way that you are supposed to. Having Chiron in your first house as well points towards self-healing. Aries, you're going through a period where you really have to go about healing, and everything that has caused you pain before that you need to heal from is going to be in your face during this period of time. You got Jupiter in your second house. So Aries, during this period of time, you can make a massive amount of money. Some of you Aries may be eating a lot more than you would like during this period of time as well. It points towards um, really finding benefits when it comes to business, when it comes towards your pleasure, your ability to find luck or happiness when it comes to this pleasure, towards making monetary gains, overeating during these periods of time as well. Could be potentially things that you can go through, Aries. And having Uranus has been in your second house. So this is going to point towards sudden, unexpected things that have been happening, possibly calamities when it comes to your money during these period of times. You could point towards electronic currency. You'll be finding new ways to get into electronic currencies during these periods as well. When it comes to you making a lot of friends, spending money on your friends, or your friends spending money on you. Over these past couple of years, it's been this way and you've been acting like this. Coming around, you have Venus is currently in your 8th house, Aries. Venus being in your 8th house is going to point towards, when it comes towards your relationships and your partners, is going to have to do a lot with, could be jealousy, it could be hate or resentment towards a partner, it could point towards joint resources, you and your partner really working out how you're going about owning and sharing what you own. Owned shared property is going to be Venus in the 8th house as well. When it comes towards the moon is currently as of today, it is in Sagittarius. The moon is currently in your 9th house, so it's going to point towards you being overly emotional. Since yesterday into today, you're going to be overly emotional, dealing with those things and natures like that. Let's go into when the moon enters into Capricorn. Your moon, that is going to be the day of the 13th. Coming into tomorrow, the moon is going to be in Capricorn, which is going to be your 10th house. So you can be very emotionally serious. Coming over from the 13th into the 14th, you're going to find yourself being very emotionally serious during this period of time as well when it comes to that. And coming into the moon being into Aquarius on December 16th into the 17th, the moon is going to be in your 11th house. You can find yourself being very emotional with friends. You can find yourself being emotionally attached during this period of time as well. When it comes to that, you may find yourself being very nurturing online. You may get emotional over a post you see on the internet. It could be any of those particular things. Let's go into the other signs. And what do you have? You have also the moon. The sun is currently in Sagittarius. The sun is in your ninth house. The sun being in the ninth house is going to point towards you going through a lot of happiness during this period of time. It's going to point towards you really finding luck, benefit. Maybe you could find yourself during this period of time trying to go back to school if you're not already in school, finding yourself doing things in the education space as well. Anything you want to learn, you may be traveling. Sagittarius is travel, having the sun in Sagittarius, you might be traveling this month as well, or you may have already traveled or are going to travel throughout this month with the sun being there. Having Mars, the ruler of your first house, in the ninth house as well, is going to point towards self-travel. Maybe you're going to travel for yourself. This is going to be a period of time for you, Aries, to find happiness. Self-happiness is going to be a big thing through this Mars in Sagittarius transit for you, especially during this month with the sun being there as well. Finding ways to make yourself happy, doing things for yourself, self-education, learning things from abroad, points to all of those particular things. Having the Mercury in Capricorn. Mercury in Capricorn is going to point towards Mercury being in your 10th house. Mercury being in your 10th house is going to point towards you having difficulty potentially speaking. It can point towards you being very restrictive with your words. You don't want to necessarily say something that may wrong somebody. When it comes to that point as well, you want to be very careful how you speak going through this Mercury in your 10th house. And this also points towards your brothers, your siblings as well. It could point towards having difficulties talking with your siblings, your neighbors, your cousins. They may be more tough on you during this period of time, or you're going to have to face responsibility for what you say as well. Having Pluto is still in Capricorn. Again, it's going to be entering into Aquarius next month, but for this week, Pluto is still in your 10th house as well. So it's going to point to you being very facing hardships, Aries, for the past couple of years, you've been facing hardships, presently with your parents. You point to your parents, your bosses, where you may hate your bosses, you may hate what's going on at your workplace or with your career during time. It's been very intense. You may have lost a parent over these past couple of years and going through this week as well is going to point towards that energy still being there. But as soon as Pluto goes into Aquarius, the energy will change up for that. Saturn is on Pisces. It's in the sign of Pisces right now. Saturn is in your 12th house. Aries, for the next, I'd say, couple months, going into the next year and a half, you may find yourself having difficulty sleeping during that as well. With Saturn being in Pisces, you may find yourself going through bits of insomnia. It could point towards you having a hard time in private, like you may not let everybody know up front in person that you may be going through some hardships, but in private you deal with that, or you're dealing with a lot of responsibilities behind closed doors that you don't want people to really know or deal with as well. There's Neptune is still in Pisces. You still got Neptune in your 12th house. Neptune in the 12th house is going to point towards your beliefs. You may again tend to believe in private. You may keep your beliefs, how you really think, your visions, your dreams. You may keep those things to yourself, and it's going to be that way for a couple more years until Neptune comes into Aries. But that was the reading for Aries. Let's go into Tauruses. Let me put a timestamp in the chat. So Taurus starts at 5:03. Taurus starts at 23:53. All right, let's do Tauruses now. Taurus, you currently have the sun is currently in your 8th house. Sun in the 8th house, Taurus, is going to point towards you during this period of time having to deal with intense situations, you having to deal with using your power, willpower. Try not to be manipulated during this period of time. Don't let anybody try to manipulate you as you're going through these things as well. With the sun being in your 8th house, you're going to deal with you dealing with a lot of situations that, if not come up intense, you may feel like people are coming after your life, or you just feel like you really need to be in control of your life during this period of time as well. When it comes to that, you may be dealing with partners and dealing with shared property during this period of time. You may get some inheritance from people. And since you have Mars there as well, Mars in your 8th house. Mars doesn't necessarily like sitting in the 8th house, even though it's ruled by it. You may feel like, yeah, people are coming after your life. Mars is going to be like an attack towards your life, 8th house. You want to be careful during this period of time as well with how you deal with people. Try not to get into any shady dealings. You really want to use your willpower to take action to get what you want. That is a positive I could tell you of how you could use this energy while Mars is sitting in your 8th house to do things as well. Again, and if you do find yourself in situations, you could find yourself in situations that might seem life or death, or you just barely got it there alive. That's a potential that could happen. You have Moon in Capricorn. Moon is going to be in Capricorn from tomorrow and going into the 14th. Moon is going to be in your 9th house. The moon in your 9th house is going to point towards, over these next 2 days, you're going to find yourself having bits of emotional overflow, emotional turmoil. You might find yourself in a position where you feel like you have an overflow of everything going on with you, or you might find yourself being very blessed or benefited from a parent, from your family members, things of that nature. And intent to can how it can play out for you. And coming into the 15th, going into the 16th, or better yet, the 16th going into the 17th, you're going to have the moon enter into Aquarius. When the moon is going to be in your 10th house, that can point towards periods of time where you feel emotionally restricted. During this period, you may find yourself being really refrained from expressing your emotions, or you may be, if you are a parent, you may be hard or very serious during this period of time. If you have a parent, your parent might be serious with you during this period as well. But don't worry, it's only going to last a couple of days. Having that Pluto is in your 9th house. So this is being you over these past couple of years, Taurus, you've been really taking strides to force or apply yourself to make what you want happen in terms of your happiness. You wouldn't be out of your way if you ever try to get your way or force your willpower to make yourself happy. This has been working for you for these past couple of years. But as soon as Pluto enters into your 10th house, which is going to be Aquarius coming into next month, it's not going to be so easy to do that anymore. Pluto is going to point towards having to place serious responsibility, is going to point towards that serious responsibility with how you express your willpower, how you deal with intense situations. And it's going to point towards hardship coming towards your life, or hardships dealing with life or death situations as well, with potential family members. A loss of a family member could happen, a loss of a father or a parental figure could happen, starting into as soon as Pluto transits into Aquarius coming in the next month. Saturn is in Pisces, that is in your 11th house. Saturn in Pisces is going to point towards, throughout the next couple months, Tauruses, you're going to be dealing with difficulties when it comes to making friends, difficulties with friendships, difficulties with electronics, computers, things of that nature. And intent two is going to point towards delays. It's going to point towards you either cutting off friends that you had, or really restricting who you keep in your circle or try to keep close to you, things of that nature. It could also point to becoming very serious about your knowledge, very serious about the experiences that you have, and things of that nature. And intent too. You still have Neptune in Pisces as well, and it's going to stay there. Neptune in Pisces is going to point towards you really believing in your friends. But since Saturn is now in Pisces, it's going to point towards you may not directly believe in your friends anymore, or you may have friends who are now lying to you, because Saturn points towards hardships and difficulties. So you may have friends who are now starting to lie to you, or you're going to find yourself in more situations as the weeks go on where you're trying to see, okay, this person is no longer really for me, or they're putting up a facade and I may have to drop them during this period. You have Chiron in Aries. Chiron is in your 12th house. This has been pointing to you for the longest period of time, or say for the past couple of months. You've been really dealing with healing in private. If you're going through something, whether emotional, physical, or mental wound, you like to deal with that in private. You don't want people to really know. Having the North Node in your 12th house as well is pointing towards you really going after your destiny, moving towards your life path. The North Node in Aries sitting in your 12th house. The North Node in Aries points towards doing for self. You're really supposed to move in a direction where you're really supposed to learn for yourself, do things for yourself. And it's supposed to, with your North Node sitting in the 12th house, Tauruses, this is a time for you to really believe in yourself. It's going to point towards self-reflection in private as well. Having Jupiter in your first house, Tauruses, you've been really lucky, and you're going to be very lucky for the next 6 months, I'd say, as Jupiter is still in um Taurus. It is in your first house. It points towards you. Either you've been going to school, you've been doing a lot of traveling this year. It's going to point towards you finding yourself in lucky situations. It points to you massively increasing your wealth. It finds you being very happy with yourselves. This year has been very a luck, blessing filled, educational filled, travel filled year for you, Taurus, and it's going to be that way in before Jupiter enters into Gemini, your second house. But with that, Uranus is also still in your first house. It's been there. So Tauruses, during this period of time, you've been finding yourself to becoming very knowledgeable, very aware of what's been happening. You've been possibly spending a lot more time with friends during these periods of time as well. It also points to you spending more time online during this period, with it being in your first house. It could also point to you being very unique. You find yourself acting more unique during this period of time while it's still there as well. Let's see. I already talked about Venus. Venus would be sitting in your seventh house. Venus in your seventh house is going to point towards your relationship. Venus naturally likes to sit in the seventh house. So during this during this time of Venus is still in Scorpio, is going to point towards you really dealing with relationships during this period as well. You dealing with your partner, potentially you can meet a new partner, is going to point towards anything regarding your partner, whether good or bad, depending on if you want a personal reading. I can tell you if it's going to be good or bad, but this particular time while Venus is still in your seventh house is going to point for you also dealing with relationships. Okay, that was Tauruses. Let's do Geminis now. So let me put a timestamp. Gemini starts at 31 or 32 minutes. 32. Okay, let's do Geminis now. Geminis. Okay. Geminis. You currently, the sun is in your seventh house. So Geminis, this is going to be a time or period for you where you're going to also, during this month, while it's still Sagittarius season, the sun is in your seventh house. So it's going to point towards you during this month, finding yourself dealing with relationships, finding you thinking more about relationships. Is going to point with you having either difficulties with a partner, finding a partner. Is going to point towards anything having to do with weddings. You'll be going to weddings. You can be going to more parties. It's going to point towards everything having to do with legal contracts or affairs. When it comes towards relationship status, dealing or thinking about your relationship status as well. When it comes to that for you all, sun or rising, when it comes towards that too, is going to point towards the moon. Since the moon currently today is still in Sagittarius, you are getting very emotional over relationships. Is pointing towards your emotions really going off at the thought of relationships. It can be over relationship partners, over weddings. You may cry if you go to a wedding, Gemini, this month, or while the moon over these next 2 days. If you went to a wedding or are going to a wedding, you might start crying during it as well, or during a party you may get an overflow of emotions, or you just feel overly emotional during this period as well. Having that, even in government, because the seventh house points towards government, you may find yourself caring more about political states, political figures, and all of those particular things. Having the Mars be in the seventh house, since Mars is also in Sagittarius. Geminis, with Mars being in your seventh house, is going to point towards you really have, during this period of time, have to deal with yourself in a relationship. That is going to be the most positive thing I can tell you out of it. You got to really think of yourself more, or do things for yourself more when it comes towards a relationship. Depending on who you are, it could also point towards fights in relationships. It could point towards arguments in relationships as well. It could point towards you really finding yourself in situations that could be very heated as well. Try to turn that energy into a positive energy where, again, you just start thinking more of yourself, or putting yourself in those situations as well. Having that, you have Mercury. Mercury is currently in the ninth. Well, let's go back to the moon for a second. Over the 13th and the 14th, the moon is going to be in Capricorn. The moon is going to be in your eighth house. Moments of emotional intensity coming tomorrow and the day after will be moments of emotional intensity for you. You may find yourself dealing with that emotional lust. Even it can point towards moments of You may find yourself, if you have a parent or whatever the case may be, you could be they may do something that you regret. You can point towards you having jealousy towards a family member for whatever reason, things of those nature and intent, but it's only going to last a couple of days. Coming into the 15th and the 16th and going into the 17th, the moon is going to be in, one second, the moon is going to be in Aquarius. The moon is going to be in your ninth house, Geminis. The moon in your ninth house of Aquarius is going to point towards emotional overflow. Is going to point to you. You can point to you having fun with your family, laughing with your family. It can point towards you being, if not overly emotional, it can point towards you really nurturing for somebody. The ninth house points towards blessing and forgiveness. You might find yourself with friends, getting overly emotional with friends since it's in the sign of Aquarius, and may find yourself really learning something online that may benefit you, something that you feel comfortable doing or learning or expressing to yourself. Expressing. The ninth house also points to broadcasting, so it could point towards you being in a space online where you broadcast something that you wanted to say, you wanted to speak as well, that you could use this energy. Coming back a bit, Saturn is in your 10th house. Gemini, this has been a time where Saturn being in your 10th house, Saturn is usually at home in the 10th house. It is. It's pointing to you really taking more responsibility in your career choice. What do you really want to do? What do you really want to say? It's going to point towards you having discipline in your belief system. You should really practice, take your time to figure out what you really believe, things like that nature. It points to not just believing. Saturn, do not, Neptune, believe everything that you hear. You really want to figure out what is going on during these periods of time, but it's going to mostly point to you finding yourself in more positions where you have to take responsibility in your career, have to take more responsibility for yourself when it comes towards being self-disciplined. You can point to that. Neptune says the same thing. Neptune is sitting in your 10th house as well, and has been sitting there for a while now. It points towards you being delusional from time to time at your workplace. It points to you possibly love to listen to music, watch movies at work. You may find yourself being very, you may even tend to lie from time to time to a coworker, or have coworkers lie to you, bosses, managers lie to you, things of that nature and intent may have been happening over these past couple of years with that placement. Having Chiron in Aries. Chiron in Aries is going to point towards wounds. He's going to point towards self-healing. But since it's in the 11th house, Chiron is going to point towards healing from friends or people, acquaintances that you find close to you. He's going to point towards you needing to really, to be able to heal yourself, you're going to need to apply yourself to close friends or acquaintances around you that could be able to help you. If you want, since it's in the 11th house, you may get an astrology reading, because the 11th house points to astrology as well. That may do you better in that regard. It points towards really opening your knowledge, looking towards the heavens, becoming more consciously aware. You must become more aware of what's happening around you and in the world around you if you really want to heal. With the North Node being in your 11th house as well, again, it's going to point to the same things. You really, to move forward with yourself in your destiny, you're going to find yourself really seeking more friends, seeking more things online, seeking more things in the public, getting out into the public, being more around other humans, accepting your humanity. Since the 11th house points towards humanity, going back to Chiron, to heal, you must accept yourself for being human. Humans make mistakes. You're not going to be perfect. You must accept the human part of you if you want to keep going on. Having Uranus be in your 12th house. Uranus in your 12th house points towards you can tend to be very unique. You can be very expressive. You may find yourself being very rebellious in private. You may come off to people that you can be very calm, cool, or collected, but in private there's a lot of chaos going on in your life during that period of time. You can point towards you loving to keep your what is unique about you private. You may not want to have every single last person know about it. It points towards electronics and money, since the 12th house is for Gemini, Taurus. Since you have Taurus in your 12th house and you have Uranus there, is going to point towards you in private. If any Gemini here is listening, sun or rising, if I were to look into your room, I would find money somewhere, whether in the floor, in the closet, underneath the bed, find money. And with Uranus there, you probably have money online, on your phone, things of that nature too, on your computer screen, you're learning about something. Could be like that as well. Let's see what else. You have Venus in your in your sixth house. Venus being in your sixth house points towards you really got to work on your relationships, things of that nature. Helping your partners out is going to point to that, since the sixth house points to aid, things of that nature and intent. Building better habits around partners, building better habits around eating. It points towards working, just really putting in that work that you need when it comes towards getting your relationships in order. Having that being said, all right, now it's time for Cancers. Cancer starts at 40, 50. Okay. Let's go towards Cancers. Cancer Suns, Cancer Rising. 2 hours. Cancers. All right. Currently, you have Venus is in your fifth house. Well, let's start with the sun and we'll go back around. The sun is currently in your sixth house. During this month, since during Sagittarius season, Cancers, this is going to be a time for you to really focus on putting in more work. Perfecting yourself is going to point towards, if you had anything you were working on, any creative ideas, this is the time to really tune it, really refine it to be something that you want to do, really work out the kinks, try to make things be more perfect. There's going to be a time where you're working more. It's going to be a time for you to really deal more with your health, your eating habits, your habits in general, things of that nature and intent. You'll be dealing more with coworkers or situations at your job during this period of time. And that's going to be with that. What else could it point to as well with Mars being there? Mars being in your sixth house. Mars in your sixth house is going to point towards really working on yourself during this period of time. While Mars is going to be in your sixth house, is going to point towards you really finding yourself where you have to work on your health as well too. It could point towards you also having fights with coworkers. It could point to you being more aggressive at work or getting into arguments at work, working harder, working faster, things of that nature. You may find yourself during this period of time wearing a lot of red. Look at your coworkers, Cancers, while you're going into work. See how many people are wearing red around you. That's a thing I tend to find as well. Having that, the moon as of today is in Sagittarius, which is your sixth house, Cancer. That is going to point towards you really being emotional while working. It points to you really caring for your coworkers, being very nurturing during this period of time as well. It can point towards your critique of your coworkers, or your coworkers might critique you. People might critique you more during this period of time as well. You may try to be more perfectionist during this period of time. When it comes to that, having Mercury be in your seventh house. Mercury is going to say the same things that the sixth house says. Mercury in the seventh house is going to point towards, like Gemini before, Cancers. Having Mercury in the seventh house says the same thing. You're going to have to really work on your relationships. It's going to point towards talking more, speaking more to relationship partners, finding yourself speaking more at parties, writing more, getting information. Maybe you got a phone call, you got invited out to a party, maybe you got invited out to a wedding. You maybe during this entire time that Mercury is going to be in Capricorn, which should be for about, I'd say, 3 weeks or so. You're going to either get invited out to the party, find out information about the party, start calling people about parties, weddings, talking more about it, things of that nature. Start talking more to your partner, finding yourself doing those things as well. Having Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto in Capricorn is going to point towards everything having to do with your partners during these past couple of years. Capricorn, you've been finding yourself in situations where that Capricorn, um, Cancers, you're going to be finding yourself in situations where you've been dealing with your partner's property during this period of time as well. More points towards being jealous towards a partner, dealing with with affairs, a partner of who needs to control what, where the money is going, who gets to own the property, how to share your property with your partner during this period of time. As soon as Pluto enters into Aquarius, that dynamic will change. For a fact, Saturn is in your eighth house. Cancer is dealing with hardships when it comes towards life in general. You can point towards really not being able to exercise your willpower the way that you want. Difficulties when it comes towards hardships or delays when it comes towards sex, when it comes towards births, trying to give birth. You may find, if you're a female and you're a Cancer, you may find yourself during this Saturn and Pisces difficulties trying to give birth, difficulties with births, things of that nature and intent too. You can point towards hate towards a parent. You can point towards difficulties or regrets with a authority figure, even that nature or intent when it comes to that. Having, let's see what else it can mean. Difficulty with underworld affairs. You can point towards being very disciplined, trying to get your life in order, get your life structured. Having Neptune also in Pisces is going to point towards really, Neptune is going to point towards everything having to do with music. It points towards your beliefs. It points towards healing, hospitals. It points towards being in solitude, feeling bouts of loneliness. Having Neptune in the eighth house is going to point towards you really having beliefs about being very in your fantasy, or being have a very specific dream for life. You have very specific dreams for life. You may not believe everything that may be happening. You may not believe that there are some dark underworld activities going. It points towards having potentially getting sick. You can point towards sickness that affects your health during this period of time as well, depending on what degree it's going to be at. Chiron and the North Node both are sitting in your ninth house. Chiron and the North Node both sitting in your ninth house. Chiron is going to point towards you're going to find yourself healing through learning at a broader rate. Is going to put you in a position where you're going to want to learn what you want. Is going to point towards a parent. Even you could speak to a parent, and that can be a form of healing as well. Points towards travel. Travel could be something that you use during this period of time to get you back in position that you want to be. Having the North Node in Aries as well. North Node in Aries is going to point towards, in your ninth house, is going to point towards you needed to find ways to be happy with yourself. Your destiny during this period of time, if you want to be happy, you want to deal with your wounds, you might find that happiness in yourself as well. Since it's sitting in your 10th. Not your ninth, your 10th actually. Saturn is in your ninth as well. So maybe difficulties with happiness. I said it was in your eighth, it's in your ninth. There we go as well. Having Jupiter and Uranus in your 11. Jupiter and in your 11 is going to point towards massive happiness from friends. You may travel with friends. You may find yourself broadcasting more online, doing those things in nature and intent. Having Uranus in your 11th house, and that's to naturally sit there. So you're going to have easy access to friends. It's going to point to you being more knowledgeable, or finding things of that are more expansive to you online when it comes to that as well. And that could be it. That should be it for that. I think we have Leo and then Virgo left. And then I'll show you what we can do, or how you can see the chart a different way.